Board of Finance to order. First item is public comment. Everybody, please back up a little bit, okay? If anybody wants to comment, please do so at this point. Yeah, I got it on here. Public comment, budget review. Anybody? Anyone want to comment?
I'm sorry, is that the public as well?
Yeah.
Public
comment.
Okay, I'd like to comment. I think that the taxpayers are telling you that the budget is too high, number one, and even more importantly, that there is no need for a tax increase, and that you should use whatever means are possible, including appropriating the surplus from the Board of Ed budget that is, to this point, calculated by the finance director towards the new budget.
Anybody else?
I'm Kirk Carr. I'd just like to add that I think that passing a budget, any budget, without knowing the current estimated surplus is in violation of the town's charter, and to do so is a violation of your oath of office.
We know what the current estimated surplus is. It's about $4.6 million. We know that.
That's the undesignated fund, not the current surplus.
That is surplus. The undesignated fund is the audited
That is
surplus.
that is not the surplus. The surplus
Absolutely is the surplus.
it's the current budget surplus.
We don't know the current.
We don't
surplus.
know what the current operating budget surplus is.
We won't know that until
You're
after
incorrect.
the year end.
The surplus refers to the audited surplus that is left over.
It says the
as of
current
June
year's
30th.
surplus.
Current surplus includes the account notice that everyone calls the undesignated surplus. So we know how much is in the undesignated surplus account.
That's simply not accurate.
All right.
It's supposed to be the estimated surplus, not the audited surplus. The charter is clear.
No, it is clear. You know, you just aren't interpreting it correctly.
Okay.
And the elected board is interpreting it correctly. Bob, what's the surplus? I mean, if you had to give a number on what the surplus is or what the undesignated fund is.
What is the current year's surplus?
We don't know what the current year's surplus is.
You were supposed to know that when you passed.
How do you
How do
know
you know
that
that
when you have
before
2
it's over?
months to go?
The charter requires you to have an estimate of the current surplus. That's what the charter says.
Which the
Read,
finance director can provide you with right now.
and you should not be passing any budget without that number.
So, Bob, what is it?
The way I understand, it's the current surplus would be the undesignated fund balance that's in the audit as of June 30th, 2012. Anything else is just an estimate.
The charter says the estimated
Okay.
surplus.
Which is $4.6 million.
That's not the estimated.
Well, so actually, I'm a little confused.
That's
because
what we interpret it to be.
We estimated 250,000 as allocated surplus, and actually at the last meeting, a couple people wanted to take all of that out, so we made it 200,000. So we did do what the charter says, which was to consider a source of surplus, which we do. We have a line item in there that says allocated surplus. We also considered it when we talked about the Board of Ed capital budget, and we reduced that because they anticipate some sort of surplus. They can't tell us exactly what it is because the year ends on June 30th and many things can change, but they considered that if they have some sort of surplus, then they can accelerate their capital purchases, and so we reduce the capital budget. So Vin, back to your suggestion, I'm unclear as to how we violated charter because we already did consider a surplus in the budget. And so the 800, you threw a number around, I mean, that amount, we did do half of it, we put it in the budget.
I think
I don't know what you want us to do now.
I think it's a matter of semantics. I mean, the words that we use, surplus, is according to audited numbers.
Okay.
The words that are coming from here are extra monies that haven't been spent, that were placed for spending from last year's budget. And they're calling it surplus when it's just a matter of, it's a wording issue that we're involved in right now, describing it accurately.
And the $868,000 figure was not just plucked out of the air. That's the last estimate of what you were given in terms of the estimate of the surplus for this.
Yes,
For-
and we considered that, and we had that number available to us when we passed the budget, and we utilized a portion of
portion.
that and applied it towards the budget that was voted on tonight.
Okay, and the voters have just told you that that's not enough, and that they
And
don't want a
unfortunately, we
tax
can't add
increase.
to any line items, we can
We
reduce.
can reduce.
What you voted for or against was the spending budget. We have to reduce the spending budget. It has nothing to do with income, where it's coming from. We have to reduce the spending budget.
And I recommend that you reduce it to the point where there will be no tax increase to the residents of Clinton.
How much of an increase did we have this year? 3.3% from last year's budget? So what are you talking about, crazy numbers?
On the town side, or the
No, the total budget, I mean, he just said he.
1.36% was the total increase between
Total
town
on
and
both
board.
sides.
Both sides.
Okay, one on a $38 million?
$42 million.
$42 million, and it's what, 1
I can tell you right now the numbers. We reduced 52K from the combined budgets. Okay, it reduced the 50K reduced the mill rate by .038 mils.
The proposed increase.
Proposed increase mill rate, 100K by .035. Okay?
That's not flat, he's talking about flat.
Flat. You're not gonna get the flat. You're not gonna get the flat.
Okay, I just wondered what his number was, he said get it flat.
You're not gonna get flat.
$868,000.
You're not gonna get the flat.
The tax increase as budgeted
You're
was
not- It's not a
2.2%.
public hearing, you're not involved in this meeting. It's not a public hearing, so.
Well, then, I mean,
No,
they
right,
public
that's
comment,
relevant.
I let them public comment, but I mean,
It's
as
not a
far
public
as.
hearing. Public hearing is next week, you can do whatever you want.
Point of order, I think you've asked for public comment. I think it's on your agenda.
But I'll tell you, right now, unequivocally, there's a new police officer that's gone. There are full-time positions potentially in this town hall that are gone. And there's gonna be infrastructure improvements that are going on the town side of the budget. I'll tell you that right now, unequivocally.
We know that.
We've been through this before. They complain about lack of services, lack of this, lack of, when you come into town hall, there's no town planner, this and that. This is the reason why. Kurt, keep filling me. I love it. I appreciate it. You don't like the town. I don't know why you moved here. I think you should go back from where you came from. I don't care. I really don't care, because you've been degrading this town ever since you've been here.
Stop.
I'm done with you. Smart guy, you think you know where you want to move to. If you didn't like this place, why'd you move here?
So Dennis, any ideas?
Civil and adults.
How much were we?
I'm an adult, Mona. He's not. He just doesn't like Clinton.
Willie, please.
We're trying to have a meeting here.
I mean, we can do a percentage decrease, or we can go line by line. We can
I'd
choose
like to at
things.
least think about taking a look at line by line, because
I agree.
I kind of agree with what Al did before. Is that I'm not here to make percentages, just repeat some.
52 here?
We're gonna talk again about it, we can vote again. You're gonna.
All right, I'll move, we reduce the budget by $175,000.
There you go.
All right, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's talk about the Board of Ed.
Give you 175.
Jack? Oh, here you
All right. Minimum budget decline, as far as the distance between what was proposed and to the MBR. Is that number 260?
244, 940.
244,
940,
940.
based on the state's information, the current MBR for 13-14 would be $30,395,922 for the operational budget.
30,395.
30 million,
What's your capital?
You got 209,000 budgeting for capital. You are aware of the budget surplus that you should continue for the balance of the year. How much of that 209 can be done, or at least appropriated?
Say again.
How much of this 209 can be appropriated this year?
When I presented to you at the
I
last,
understand what you said before, now I'm asking you again.
the 209 is really ongoing
Okay.
services, that if we were to, we wouldn't be able to expend.
Gotcha.
things
I
on
understand
that.
it, even appropriated but not yet started because of the timing.
Based on my understanding of the way that we can use that money, it would be things that we would have to have been able to have invoiced.
Okay, understood.
All right, thoughts? Board of
Lost
Ed?
by 90 votes. 90 votes?
Yeah, but a lot less people voted for the school budget.
We're talking
Because they don't care.
$100,000.
No, 300 people voted, less people voted for the school budget than voted for.
People only cared about the town. So we should be addressing those who care.
So the proportions
The other
are
way
different.
around.
It was 11.2 yeses and 1.212 noes.
Right.
Difference of 90 votes.
And go to the MBO.
I think that's too much because the 90 votes is meaningful.
2,300 votes.
I think it should be
We're talking about a
minimal.
$90,000 increase.
I said, I think that's way too much. The 90 votes is meaningful. I think you have to factor that in and you can't slash it by a lot. It's meaningful. That 90 votes is a meaningful number and that's telling us something, just as if the bigger swing on the town budget is telling us something. I think we should make our
No,
reservations.
I don't think so, but I have to disagree. It just tells you that 200 to 300 people didn't bother to vote for
Because
the
they
Board
don't
of
have
Ed.
kids or they don't care. I mean, so why should we cater to that?
Well, when it came around for the school
I
budget,
think we
the
should
board
treat them
votes
just
that.
as-
So wasn't that a
Treat them the same way.
I agree. Right, we are listening to it by cutting something, but in proportion, is what I'm saying.
Well, the total
I
vote
just say
was
hit it the
less.
same thing.
Well, what's the percentage?
But I don't know if you can define what people did or what they didn't do by the
Right.
All we know is that they rejected it.
They rejected it.
That's the proposition to start with. So now the question is, do we cut below where we had budgeted for last year, or do we try to compromise the number between the increase from last year to this year?
Wait, I mean, the Board of Education is a wonderful organization. I think they do a terrific job.
Yeah, we all do.
Right. Okay, so we took $175,000 out of the town budget, which is half the school budget. So should we take $350 out of the school? No.
No.
We can't, but we could go to the minimum budget requirement. And they're still gonna come in with surpluses.
How do you know that?
I don't know that, but they've done it every year for the last 4 years.
How many people have retired in the last 4 years?
I don't know, how many gonna retire next year?
I don't know.
All right.
Somebody knows.
Well, that's why we budget. We budget to make sure we have enough.
We're only $250,000 away from the minimum budget requirement.
So Jack, what does that look like if we cut?
It's not our job to throw dice to think if somebody's going to do
What
something.
does that look like for you?
That's not our job to throw dice.
30% also?
No, 30% of, there's a 30% difference in
It
the
really does
operating,
depend on
town budget, and there's an 8% difference, so that's the thing, there's an 8% swing. So, we should go for
Reducing their budget by
4
8%.
times less than, we should reduce it by 4 times less than what we reduced the town.
Nice going, Val.
It's interesting.
It's fuzzy math.
Yeah, right.
Well, there has to be a number
What the
between.
kids in this school
Well, we
care
have 31,000.
about the budget. And doesn't want to go to the MBR.
Well, no, I-
Doesn't. You know, hey,
If you take a look at the
I
total
think a lot of
education
people care
budget,
about education that don't have kids in it.
like that. Send it to private schools, send it to Catholic school.
there's, the increase looks like a little over under $100,000 overall. From 31,309 to 31,408.
Right, so that's,
406. It's a $97,000 increase.
right,
Operating budget is 170.
Total, I'm looking at.
179.
We don't really have much control over the debt service, and we've already cut the capital in half. So in the operating
We
budget.
do have, we could save 50 cents on the dollar, but I know what that would have. California towns in the low neighborhood, that's. He'll be a proud member of the Board of Finance on that. 170.
Well, that won't happen, because
I
statute
don't
allows
want to
special
cut the,
assessments. so.
yeah, but I can't look at just the operating budget increase, because the debt reduction increase, and you can't cut that. I'm looking at the overall budget increase of 96,000.
And the capital.
And that includes the capital as well, which really was down some. Again,
We increased from 100 to 209.
Based upon what they can spend. Unfortunately.
I'd like to make a motion that we reduce the education budget by $49,000, which is half the increase. Or is it 46? Anyway, 49, I started it.
A second.
Discussion?
I think 49,000 for the $30 million budget is
Looking at the increase.
not a strong enough statement, but I'm thinking about this.
Well, I'm looking at an increase that includes, most of the increase is in the debt redemption, which you don't have control of.
The problem is, Tom, from what I gather, from what you hear, from everybody talking, is that the citizenry is a little disgruntled about the fact that the school comes in with bigger surplus than the town.
And they
So
prefer to see
they-
them come in with deficits.
Okay, I'm just telling you, you hear this constantly at the different public hearings, and
We've
that
heard
they
it
don't
very,
like $600,000, $800,000 surpluses. So they think that they should be not getting as much. If we cut that by 49, all I could say is I would hope that, the people would come out this time and vote, or the 300 people that didn't vote this time better wake up and cast a vote next time.
well, you're not gonna go much further than that before you're below last year's budget. And that's with increased debt service.
You want to cut it below last year's operating budget?
No, you can't.
Like I'm saying,
No, you
because of the
can.
debt service
You-
increase,
Well, then you're giving up $6 million and change, right? Or you risk $6 million and change.
From state aid.
No?
No, we can't.
You don't
You
think-
can't do that, I mean,
You have to make it up in the following year,
And how much would that be?
whatever you're below.
Sandtown, they really cut the whole thing.
So you're kicking the can down the road.
Well, we've been kicking the can down the road for the last 4 years.
If you went to the NDR that applies currently for the current enrollment of the school, isn't that approximately $150,000 difference right there?
244,940.
Isn't it $3,000 per student, and we're approximately 50 students lower
No,
this
it's
year than last year?
23.5.
23, so, well, still there's $70,000 right there, $70,000. If you went with the MDR. I mean, the reality is that the enrollment is declining. And a lot of people see that, and they wonder why the increase occurs every year when they're, I mean, I understand. It's not like you're eliminating a third grade classroom or something like that. It doesn't equivocate that way. But that's, the reality is there are fewer kids in school, and people do not understand why the budget continues to go up every year. That's it.
For the same reason that the cost of milk goes
And
up.
then we wind
the
up
cost
with
of
an
gas goes up,
$800,000
and so, that's why. Anybody else want to comment? No? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No,
The 49,000. 49.
I gotta know on that, I'm sorry. It's only-
only two voted yes,
Motion.
Three voted yes.
there's gotta be 6
I
votes.
seconded it.
I heard 4 votes.
Who was second?
I know, that's what I say,
You
call the
did,
vote
and you
again.
voted yes.
All right. Let's revote, okay? It's $49,000 reduction from the Board of Ed proposed budget. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
4-2, motion carries. 49,000. All right, motion adjourned.
I make the motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Get the word out.
We will.